Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Today's going to be more of a vinyl focused day, but before I get started, I'll just share everything that's going on here before I clear the table for the records. So here I got my mocha pot Americano. I put a little bit of cinnamon into the coffee grounds before reassembling the pot, and it is delicious. I highly recommend that, especially now that it's getting more crispy if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. So here's some things I'm up to today. This week was a crazy week. We're getting into a really busy time of year at work, so I haven't filled out either my life log or my one line a day. And I accumulated throughout the entire week all of these post-it notes with different to-dos or a schedule for the week or things I have to buy. Just like any kind of brain dump activity went on these post-it notes this week. And so I'm going to transfer all of that into here somehow. And then something else that I have been doing and I'm going to do later is I recently finished this book. I loved it. And I always underline my books as I read them. And this time I decided to go through my underlines after finishing it and categorize them by theme. And I started journaling about it as well. I'll do a separate video about this process and this book in general, but that's what's going on here. I need to go to an office supply store at some point today to pick up more flags because I'm running out of colors. But yeah, I'll do that later. That's what this is about. And all right, let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about me reorganizing my records. So right now, or for the past, how many years has it been? 20 years almost, 18 years. I've organized my records by alphabetically. And I decided recently to reorganize my records by genre or theme. And it's because I realized that I need to organize my collection as compatible with my relationship with listening to music. I tend to start with a mood or a vibe and then go from there. It doesn't usually start with a specific record or artist that I want to hear. So browsing alphabetically just started getting a little bit annoying over time. Like if I wanted to listen to metal, I'd have to look all over my shelves and it was really kind of chaotic. So I took a little while to look through my whole catalog and assign all of the records to genre or categories. And I went through a lot of back and forth to decide if these categories were correct enough. And this led me to have a conversation with a coworker who has a background in information systems. I basically said to him, this categorization would look very different if I was setting it up for a record shop, I realized. And he said, yeah, of course, because categories need to be useful in the context of your own life. After which he pulled out this list of books that he has. It's his catalog or inventory of books that he categorizes by theme and what room in his house they're in. So the fun thing about this little mini project is that there are infinite ways of categorizing. And that reminded me of, I have this taxonomist friend that I used to work with. And one day I saw her in the office kitchen carrying a Ziploc full of plastic toys. And I immediately asked her, what is that? And she said, oh, I have some interviews today and it's one of my interview questions for candidates. And of course I had to know what she was talking about. And what she did was she opened the bag and she dumped all of the little plastic toys out onto the counter. And she said, this is what I do. I'll empty this bag onto the table in front of the candidate and I'll ask them to put the items into categories. And she said, there's no right way to do this. She just wants to see how people think and organize items together. So basically, there's no right way to do categorization. It's really about the context and what's relevant to the person who will be using it, in my case, the categories of records. I landed on 10 categories, and I'm going to talk about them and share a random record from my collection falling under each. Now, in order to do this, I bought these plastic record divider tabs, and I looked at a few before settling on these. These are a nice sturdy plastic, and the edge, the tab part on my record shelves like sticks out a nice amount. I used a label maker to make the labels for the categories, and that's it. So with that, let's get into it. The first one is pretty genre self-explanatory: metal. So metal is most of the records in my collection. I had a sort of circuitous path to getting to metal and going full in. It started in the 90s with hard rock like Marilyn Manson, and then kind of inched into Nine Inch Nails, in then more industrial and like screamy music. And then I dove headfirst into Metallica. But it wasn't really until the early 2010s that I fully got into the genre and really started exploring. So my favorite kind of metal is melodic death metal, and that's a lot of what's in my collection, along with some prog metal like Opeth, and then Metallica. I have so much, it's almost in its own category. I even considered putting it in its own category, which I could do because this pack of divider tabs came with a bunch and I'm only using 10 of them. But for now, let's talk about a random record from my metal collection. So this is an artist or a band called Zeal and Ardor, and the album is called Devil Is Fine. Now, this band has a really interesting origin story for me. One day in 2016, I was in the subway. I had my headphones in, and I was just like standing at the door staring into space. All of a sudden, this guy, I noticed after a few seconds, he was approaching me and sort of gesturing to me like he wanted to talk to me. And I was like, what is this guy's deal? Can't he see I have headphones in? And he said, I'm really sorry to bother you. I noticed your shirt and I had to give you a band recommendation. Now, I was wearing a Gojira shirt. They're a French melodic death metal band. And he said, I was listening to an interview with the frontman of Gojira, and he recommended this band and this album, and you have to listen to them. And so I was so caught off guard by this interaction that I like took out my phone, I wrote down the name of the band. The second I got home, I put it on because I was like, what is this band? My jaw dropped. So it was like nothing I had ever heard in my life before that. So Zeal and Ardor started as a solo project by this Swiss American named Manuel Gagnon, and now it's a full band by now, but this is their first studio album, and I don't know how you would categorize this band's sound. Probably black metal, but it's really not strictly black metal. It has a bit of a lo-fi sound like black metal. I read that he used very simple equipment to play and record this, but I've heard it referred to a lot as like gospel meets black metal, and that is really very, very spot on and very close to what this record sounds like. Now, the song that really got me was this one, Come On Down. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, I know I didn't say a lot about it. I have a lot of records to get through, but I recommend putting this on. And if you like it, you will like the whole catalog. Like, they have a few albums out by now. I've seen them a couple of times live. They're a phenomenal band, like different again from anything I've ever heard. So that is Zeal and Ardor under the metal category. The next category is simply called 90s. Now, that is not a genre of music. Most of the records that I have in this category cover grunge and like an alternative subgenre or genre. The years 1993 to 98 are a very significant time in my life. It was sort of a time of a music awakening for me. My family and I did not live in the US, and we moved to the States at around this time, and it was just an assault of pop culture. MTV all the time, Beavis and Butthead, 7-Eleven, Lockers, Teen Magazine, lip balm, glitter, colorful plastic, like fruity fragrances, caboodles, slip dresses, sunflowers, you name it. And this was right in the early 90s when grunge was having its, like, was unveiling itself to the world. So I have a big tie to this decade and associate a lot of music to it. So the album I'm choosing for 90s is Bleach by Nirvana. Now, don't come for me. I know that this came out in 1989 and it's not 90s, but again, this makes sense to me. So Nirvana is one of my favorite bands of all time. This is their first studio album. It was recorded in Seattle, and it has a heavier and more raw sound than their subsequent releases. It was influenced a little bit by sludge metal. It's more high-paced than that. I read in a review that it was described as having a chaotic irreverence, which is just perfect. There's a song on here called Love Buzz. This is a cover of a 60s sound that has like sitars in it. It's really a great cover, and when I hear it, I only think of Drew Barrymore on a jet ski. Now, this is because Drew Barrymore was in a movie in the 90s called Mad Love, and this guy had a crush on her and was like watching her ride her jet ski in a lake or something, and the song Love Buzz was playing at the same time. About a Girl, now I heard the Unplugged in New York version of About a Girl before I heard this one. It was really nice later to hear the like more electronic original. Electronic sounds like the more plugged original. School and Downer are two of my very favorite Nirvana songs. Downer is one that's over before it even starts, it feels like. And School is a song that has like 4 words in it, just sung over and over and over. But you really feel the raw angst and kind of unhinged nature of this album. I love those songs. Negative Creep, of course, it's one of their more popular ones. In one review of this album, the reviewer wrote that this album has an almost palpable sense of danger, like this whole thing could fall apart at any second. And I completely agree. Negative Creep is a really good example of that feeling. Now, this particular pressing that I have came out in 2009. So in 2009, Sub Pop released a 20th anniversary edition of Bleach, and it features a live recording of a performance that Nirvana did in 1990 in Portland as bonus material. That bonus disc has one of my favorite Nirvana songs in it, which is called Sappy. But anyway, this album is on white vinyl. It has a lot of bonus material in here, as you can see. Maybe I'll do a more detailed video on this later. But this is one that the second I heard it was being re-released, I immediately pre-ordered it from the label Sub Pop. So I've had this one for quite a few years, maybe 15 years or so. So that's 90s, very, very seminal time in my life again. All right, the next category is called angst. Again, this is not a genre. This is more about an encapsulation of a feeling from a point in time. Now, a lot of the records in this category, I either wanted to put into metal or 90s, and some of them are metal adjacent, other ones are not. This one's purely about a mood and a little bit of subgenre lines blurring for me. For example, all of Deftones is in here. I only have their early albums because that's when I became a fan, and I think anything they produce is immaculate, but I really love the raw early albums of theirs, and those are in here. The record that I chose to talk about is the soundtrack to The Crow, partly because we're just coming out of Halloween, and the movie The Crow takes place on the night before Halloween. So this is one of my very favorite albums, and The Crow is one of my favorite movies of all time, like top 2. This soundtrack is one of 2 CDs in high school that I broke from playing it too much. I might have just handled it so much that I scratched it. But basically, the soundtrack takes the dark, bleak mood in the movie and the rage and revenge-fueled energy and like brings them together. And the track listing and the order of the tracks like really takes you to that journey. The sheer number of incredible bands on here is staggering. There's 9 Inch Nails, The Cure, Stone Temple Pilots, Pantera. I read that the inclusion of songs by The Cure and Joy Division are worth mentioning because the influences of both of those bands are present in the original comic book of The Crow, which I haven't read yet, and that's insane, but that's a whole other topic. My favorite track on this album is this one, My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult. It has so much freaking energy, and for angsty me in the 90s, it was the perfect song to put on really loud. So let me move my coffee to keep showing these gatefolds. So here you have this very recognizable scene in the movie, some stills, and I kept the shrink because of the hype stickers, but here's the track listing with Brandon Lee in the center, and this is pressed on black vinyl. Now this album, a friend of mine saw someone on Reddit posting it for sale. He told me about it and then ordered it for me as a favor because I didn't feel comfortable giving my address to like a random Redditor. And I'm so glad that he saw that and told me about it. Now, a really fun thing about this record is that this is also a 3-sided album, and the back, side D, has an etching of the Crow on it. Really, really beautiful touch there. So that gets us through the angst category. Let's get into something totally different, electronic. So this isn't a huge category for me, but there is some electronic music that I really love. Most of the records in this category include Daft Punk, some 90s like Prodigy and the Hacker soundtrack, and mid-2000s French electro era. Now, what these all have in common to me is the raw energy. It's like less polished, and it's more imperfect and human. Now, the record that I chose is by an artist or band duo called Heartsrevolution. Now, this group in the mid-90s would drive this pink DIY ice cream truck around Lower Manhattan, and they would sell merch out of it. And I just, mid-20s me thought that was just the coolest thing ever. This record is a single for a song called CYOA, or Choose Your Own Adventure. Now, this was and is my favorite track of theirs. The first song I heard from them as well. And the music video is so fun. It merges this dark urban kind of feel with pops of neon and toy-like colors. So it's kind of like electronic meets fairy tale, but it's still very gritty. I found this record in one of my old neighborhoods. There were a few records laid out for sale in a park. And this one was, I think they were selling it for $6 or something. But I was really excited to hear it on vinyl. And this one is this hilariously cute and fun shade of pink. These pixelated animals, the fox and the bunny, are a reference to a line in the song. This Heartsrevolution had vinyl that was glow in the dark and heart-shaped as well. I would love to get my hands on that at some point, but for now I consider this a really fun, cheap, serendipitous find. So that is electronic. The next category is called Golden. The name comes from Golden Oldies. So I love 1960s pop and love songs. These are from when my mom was in high school, and she played this music every day on the way to school when I was a kid. So I love the doo-wop and brill building sound of the 60s. The vocal harmonies just can't be beat. I called it Golden instead of Golden Oldies because the records in my collection here go through to the 70s as well. There's some classic rock and some psychedelic records, and I just wanted to combine them. The record I chose for this category is the Monkees' Greatest Hits. So I got it for $10 at my favorite record store at the time. This is a very important album to me because it was my very first piece of physical media ever. My mom got it for me on cassette. I was maybe 5. And it's one of those albums where I start singing the next song when one ends. This is a compilation that came out in 1977. It is greatest hits, so obviously it has Daydream Believer on it, one of, if not the most popular and famous Monkees songs. I love this song so much. Obviously, it's perfect to me. I love Davy Jones's voice. Right now, this song, I'm Not Your Stepping Stone, is probably my favorite Monkees song. It totally goes in a different direction. It gets really kind of aggressive. So anyway, this album, it was only $9.99, but it's priceless to me. So the shop I found it in closed after the pandemic, unfortunately, but I have a lot of very important to me records from there. And I just was so excited when I saw this one. I was flipping through the bins and I saw basically just this orange gradient, and I just knew. At first I was like, could it be? And I pulled it out and I got so excited. I didn't even look at at anything else. I just took this. From here, I would like to transition into a category called Punk Post. I wanted to call it Punk Plus Post, but my label maker doesn't have a plus sign on it, so it's just Punk Post. This is my second largest category. It includes punk and post-punk, mostly 76 punk, which is my favorite kind. I actually just learned about that subgenre name when I was in Berlin this summer. I used to tell everyone that my favorite kind of punk was 1970s punk from New York and Detroit and Ohio, which is very a mouthful. But in record shops in Berlin, I saw this record tab in shops called 76 Punk, and it was basically all of that. So this part of my collection has tons of Ramones. They are one of my favorite bands of all time, and I intentionally put this category after the golden one because Ramones are very influenced by 60s pop and love songs. They did several covers of those songs. They have a lot of doo-wop-like harmonies and just simple, catchy melodies. I also have some 80s and 90s, approaching more poppy punk from California records, and then some post-punk too, newer bands like Viagra Boys and Murder Capital. The album I'm going to show you here is Blank Generation by Richard Hell and the Voidoids. Now, hold on, I'm going to get something. I'm going to get a prop. I'm back. So I learned about this band from reading this book. This is Marky Ramone's memoir, and he was their second drummer. And Marky Ramone used to be in this band, the Voidoids. And when I read about it, I was like, the Voidoids, what a weird, wacky name. So I had to check them out, and I ended up just adoring this sound. So as you can see, and it was, oh my gosh, the 70s in New York, this is the whole era of your clothes are falling apart and we're holding them together with safety pins. There's a lot of egg beater hair, your hair looks like it was styled by an egg beater. This was put out on Sire Records, which put out a ton of Ramone songs. And basically it has this very I don't care attitude in the vocals. It's very like insouciant nihilism. I love Richard Hell's voice, the pace of the songs. It's very catchy. It was recorded and mixed in New York at Electric Lady Studios. And one thing I learned is that the final mixing of this album was cut short by the New York City blackout of 1977, like literally cut short, which is just a fun little piece of trivia. With this record, I never knew where to put it alphabetically. It was either H for Richard Hell, V for the Voidoids, but I ended up putting it under R because I thought this is the whole band name, Richard Hell and the Voidoids. But I don't have to worry about that now because it is going very solidly and easily, no controversy, into punk plus post. All right, all. Here is the category I'm maybe most on the fence about. Now, I called it Waves because there's a lot of new wave in this. It's mostly new wave and art rock or art pop. Most of my memories of the bands I put together in this one are from DJ sets from the mid-2000s. So there's a lot of Depeche Mode, The Smiths, Talking Heads. Patti Smith Group is in here, which maybe could fit into punk or post-punk, but the sound, I just can't put it there. But anyway, it's sort of the most fluid of the category names, which is funny because it's called Waves. But anyway, here's the record that I'm going to share for this one. Pet Shop Boys, Actually. This came out, I think, in 87 or 88. The Pet Shop Boys, they just really know how to write a song. I mean, the batting average of songs on this album is just insane. Like, What Have I Done to Deserve This? Rent is really amazing. It's a Sin is one of my favorite songs. It was actually covered by Emily Haynes from Metric acoustically, and it's beautiful. There's a little bit of political content in here. There are credits on this album to Ennio Morricone and Angelo Badalamenti, which is just what? Another thing I read was that the female vocals on What Have I Done to Deserve This are Dusty Springfield. And this album and that release, like, revived her career a little bit, which is just very cool. I got this from that same shop that closed during the pandemic. It was $20. I don't know why record shops put price stickers directly on the jacket. That drives me crazy. But, you know, I'm not like a pristine, like, perfectionistic collector, so I guess it's fine. I learned that this album art was going to be a painting. And I can't imagine that now because this photo just goes so well with my experience of the record. I read that this design with the photo in this way was inspired by a Grace Jones album art, which was shot by this photographer called Jean-Paul Goude. I really love his work a lot. The last thing I'll say about this album is this is the best sounding record that I have. It sounds really just warm and beautiful. And when I was looking up the production, it's kind of weird because the production seems to have been done like piecemeal and by different people. So the fact that like everything comes together so beautifully and it has such an amazing sound is really something else. So I just love the Pet Shop Boys. Their music is so catchy and beautiful. So there we have it, Waves. Just a couple more left, y'all. Speaking of waves, let's talk about my favorite named genre or category, spaghetti surf. So I'll explain that in a second, but basically this is my surf rock category. I love surf rock so much. My love for it got really intense when I was working on a project in around 2012 on a company that has a history in California in the 60s and surf culture. So I was listening to a lot of surf to get into the mindset of working on that project, and then went down a rabbit hole discovering the surf revival of the 90s. Now, this revival included one band and album that is one of my favorite albums. It's by a band called the Hellbenders. It was never pressed on vinyl. If it was, you better believe I would have it. But the surf revival in the 90s was a super fun, like, used imagery of news, media, and culture of the 1960s. So the space race, monsters, gorillas, aliens. There's a great band called Los Straitjackets, and they play in luchador masks. Like, it's a really, really fun, still kept alive genre. I called it spaghetti surf because spaghetti western music and surf rock share so many elements to me, like the wavy sounding clear guitar reverb, the tremolo picking, the minor keys, and this like rhythmic drive. So I can't separate those two genres in my mind. They're just one. I love it all. And in the surf revival, especially with that Hellbenders record, like they kind of blur. I would say it's more spaghetti western than surf, but like, again, I can't, they're very inextricably linked to me. Now, the record I've chosen for here is actually a 7-inch. So these aren't going to be organized in the tabs. I have a separate container for 7 inches, but this is my very favorite surf song. Now, this is by The Ventures, and The Ventures is one of my favorite surf rock artists or bands. And this is a song called Walk, Don't Run, which is, I think, their first big release that they put out, and it catapulted them into success. This is an original press. Like, as you can see, the letters are fading here. There is a scratch on this that skips it, but I don't mind. I'm just really happy to have an original Walk, Don't Run. I'll get a better one at some point, but I found this randomly in a record store and just got super excited. Now, this genre, this category, it's my smallest category. So I even wondered, should I have it as a category? But I do want to grow it more. The problem is that I've run into is a lot of instrumental surf records from the 60s I come across have like variations of the same songs on them. So it can be a little hard to find records that are unique enough that I would want to put on their own. So if you have any recommendations for surf rock records that are really their own unit and that have some original, like not really repeated material on it, please let me know. Oh, one other really interesting thing I learned when researching Walk, Don't Run is it was written by a jazz guitarist named Johnny Smith about maybe 8 years or so before the Ventures recorded it, 6 years. And Johnny Smith taught himself how to play guitar as a child in pawn shops. And the pawn shops let him play in exchange for keeping the guitars tuned. And I just think that is so incredible that like this kid who taught himself how to play in pawn shops, like wrote one of the most memorable songs of all time and my favorite surf song. So there we have it, Spaghetti Surf. Okay, next one is called Indie 2000. So basically, there's a lot of indie rock in here. Some of them aren't technically on independent labels, I'm sure. But to me, indie is more of a sound for me. And in the mid-2000s, I got really into this sound. So that's why it's called this. You know, this category for me has records from Decemberists, Spoon. There's also rock like Arctic Monkeys in there. And then one of my very favorite bands, Blonde Redhead. So I have every record of theirs, but I chose Misery is a Butterfly because it's hard to pick a favorite of theirs, but this is definitely up there, and it was the first time I had heard them. So when I was in school, I was listening to college radio, I was taking a bath, and then I heard the song Falling Man that's on this album. I freaked out. I loved it instantly. Does that ever happen to you? So I literally ran out of the bathtub to go to my computer to see what this was playing. I was dragging soapy water all over my apartment. And it ended up being on this album. This band has had an incredible arc and evolution. Their early work was influenced by noise rock, and it's been compared to Sonic Youth a lot. But then a few years into their career, they inched into what some people call dream pop. This album is one of them. To me, it's more, I mean, sure, dream pop sounds right. I experience this record as very, like, synesthetically, like, as lavender sparkly water. It's like, it is very dreamy. Their later work is a little bit more airy and sparse, and they've put out some newer material lately as well. I love all of it. It's always melodic. The lead singer, the female lead singer, Kazu, has an angelic voice, and then the two Italian twins who are in the band too, who have the last name Pace. I call them the Pace twins. Amedeo has a high-pitched voice that I put in a container in my mind with voices like Brian Molko from Placebo, and I love that kind of voice. So anyway, Misery is a Butterfly is a beautiful, beautiful record. All right, guys, rounding it out. This is the last one. This is called All Sorts, and it's basically the uncategorized records. It includes one-offs like the 2 rap albums I have, like 1 pop album, 1 jazz album. The word is from Licorice All Sorts. The imagery of Licorice All Sorts is very strong to me because there was a character in the book Matilda and this accompanying illustration who like ate licorice all sorts, and I always loved the look of them. I've never had them myself. The record that I picked for this, I actually, after researching it, I think I want to put it in a different category, but I will tell you about it. This is called Killed by Deathrock Volume 2. And this record I bought in a record shop in Florida. I was in there browsing with a friend, and I heard this song playing that was dripping with minor key, which is my favorite. So I went to the counter and I asked, "What are you playing?" And they pointed to the wall where this was hanging. Now, this is also the first time I heard about the genre death rock. It merges punk with goth and like elements from horror films. It came out of the punk scene. So, of course, instant love. It has very like repetitive rhythms and like drum and bass lines driving them, like haunting vocal effects. How are you sensing a pattern here? The rhythmic drive of songs. So this Killed By part is one of the most fascinating histories I've read. Now, this is from a series of compilations called Killed by Death, shortened KBD, that started in the late 80s, started in Sweden, and since then, I read that more than 50 other albums have been added to this series by anonymous people. So it really was first to showcase underground, like rare punk. And there's no real numbering system because they would come out at random times from random places. Wikipedia has a really great timeline of these releases that is fascinating. Killed by Deathrock is a spin-off. There are 2 of them. I found the other record, Volume 1, at a record shop in my city, which I was really excited about. It was released by a label called Sacred Bones. Now, when I went to look them up and learn about them, I went to their About page, which only has the words "a family affair" on it. Not very revealing, but I took a peek on their site, and they have truly beautiful releases, a vinyl membership with records that come with like wax seals. So I'm definitely going to be looking into them more, but basically these 2 records, Killed by Deathrock 1 and 2, have a lot of obscure death rock songs on them, and it's just the most beautiful sound. So again, after doing all that research, I think I'm going to put this into Punk and Post, but it's staying here anyway because it's kind of to show that I think I'm going to be moving records in between categories, like as my relationship with the records and my definition of each category solidifies more. So it's a very fluid living cataloging system, and I'm really excited about that. I have one final tab, and it's called Catalog. This is where I'm going to keep the records that are recently purchased that I haven't added to my catalog yet. They are kept in a separate place already, but since I have a ton of dividers, I was like, might as well use that one. Thus concludes my show and tell of my new vinyl categories. I might check in at some point in a few weeks to share how it's going, but this is what I settled on for now. As I said, it's going to be a living cataloging system, which I love the idea of, and will evolve as my relationship to the music does. So anyway, hope this was interesting. Again, I know these categories don't make sense to anyone but me, but that's really the beauty of it and the point. So yeah, thanks for joining me and listening a bit. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.